Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Chosun History Society Zoom Talk series. My name is Sixiang Wang. I am the moderator of today's event. On behalf of the Chosun History Society, I would like to thank all of you for joining in today's online event. And most importantly, I want to thank our two speakers. Uh, First, we have Minki Kim, who acts as the project manager and head writer for Nine Heavens Press, a tabletop RPG publishing circle focusing on storytelling inspired by East Asian folklore. Nine Heavens Press has successfully printed its first 5e campaign book, Undying Corruption, and is now crowdfunding its second, The Black Market Guide to Immortality. And we're joined by Professor Timothy Tangerhlini, who is the Elizabeth H. and Eugene A. Shurtleff Chair in Undergraduate Education and Professor in the Department of Scandinavian in the School of Information. He's a folklorist and ethnographer by training, but most of you are probably more familiar with his role as a researcher and scholar of Korean folklore. So, just also, I would like to provide a little context to the Chosun History Society before we begin, which includes the mission of our organization and what we do. Chosun History Society is a public learned society that promotes the study, research, and teaching of Korea's past. Our goal is to foster an active community of researchers and learners. We connect scholars working both outside and inside the professional academy across the disciplines. We bring together scholars, artists, antiquarians, content creators, and interested generalists from around the world. And we also aim to provide opportunities for scholars who are operating independently or are otherwise under-resourced, and in order to give them the opportunity to share research and make networks. We have multiple ongoing projects, including this public Zoom series, a translation and consultation network, and we are in the midst of planning a global Chosun initiative, which you should stay tuned in about. And we also encourage you to visit our official website, which is here, which I'll post in the chat. We are also currently accepting donations to support our programming. These donations help defray our infrastructure costs, including website maintenance and to pay for our Zoom subscription. We're a registered 501c3 nonprofit corporation, and all donations are tax deductible in the United States. So, okay, so what we'll do now is I'm going to hand the floor over to Minki Kim, who will talk a little bit about his project before we move into a moderated question and answer panel with Dr. Tangerhlini. So without further ado, Minki.
Right. Thank you, Shishang. Yeah, my name is Minki Kim. I wrote Undying Corruption and just recently put out The Black Market Guide to Immortality, which fall into a shared sense of world building into well, at first I focused on the country of Tangguk, which builds on my research into Korean history, particularly in through the Joseon dynasty. Uh, but I wanted to expand the scope a little bit in Black Market Guide, just to what the world outside of that area looks like. I think the best way I can start by explaining what it is that I wrote is by it's a campaign book. That uses Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition and also Pathfinder 2nd edition rules to facilitate storytelling. Uh, Tabletop role playing, I thought, was a wonderful medium for storytelling since because of the interactive nature of its storytelling. Like through levels 1 through 20, I have different scenarios and different what if if players want to pursue this line of inquiry, want to pursue that leads into these different story beats or plots, then my book does is my book lays out the scenario as as detailed as possible so that it allows the GM or DM, the dungeon master or the game master, to help move the story along so that the players with the characters that they rolled up in advance ahead of time can react to them, use dice to resolve to resolve certain actions, to see different degrees of success, failure, and see how it goes. And uh, I I just thought that that sort of medium of storytelling allows for a more in-depth exploration when it's done by uh, a GM that's well vested, curious, mutually curious about history, about the concepts that they're touching on in their story. Undying Corruption t uh, basically takes place in the Joseon Dynasty, the beginnings of the Joseon Dynasty, with its with changes in with Neo-Confucian-esque changes in society. I touch on Mudang, Korean shamanism, or the indigenous faith of Shinism, uh, bel belief practices in communicating with spirits, and ancestor spirits, heavenly spirits, wayward spirits. Commune with them in order to navigate through uh, navigate through life, basically, and how those beliefs increasingly came into conflict with these changes in society. The story basically plays around that time in the setting, with spiritual and political corruption also being major factors. You yourselves as players play as Mudang navigating this setting, this world. I Yeah. So I started this largely because I thought that there was a dearth of Korean inspiration in fantasy, or uh, at least from what I could find. Like I think that a good deal of that is changing now, especially with K-pop Demon Hunters being wildly popular as it is. But even with that outstanding exception, I think there's still a lot of people that still don't know much about what exactly a Korean fantasy, Korean mythology, Korean folklore look like. And I hope that by engaging in by presenting a story through a fairly popular, accessible medium, that people can kind of see, experience a little bit about, well, a little bit of my observations and research through it. Uh, so yeah, I think that's largely I think that largely goes into that's largely what I what I've presented with Undying Corruption. Uh, I I guess also a little bit about my background. I I'm an English major, so I'm approaching history with not really not really as my major is in history, so I think that in terms of research and such, there's certainly there's certainly more of an in-depth look that I could give. So I try my best with the resource that I have. Like in terms of the Mudang faith, I looked through a lot of anthropological essays, books that have been written on the subject, but I found that a lot of that research could be, well, missing uh, in terms of lived experience. like personal convictions. There's a component in that I felt I could learn a bit more about. So I looked around and found Shinseol, my editor and also a practicing mudang, to help uh, clarify certain bits of information, small little bits of information that might be a bit inaccurate, or at least approach it from a more scholarly, academic perspective, instead of a lived one, which there's a distinction between the two that I try to uh, that I try to resolve as I uh, start world building through uh, Undying Corruption, through crafting the world of Iseng. Uh, but yeah, through I personal research, consultants absolutely assisted me with this process. Uh, is there anything else that I could clarify on, Shishang?
Well, I mean, there are some other questions I might follow up on in a bit, but I think if there's maybe you can walk us through some of the images that you wanted to
Oh,
share. Yeah.
yeah, yes, of course. Right. So these are illustrations that I've commissioned for our book. Uh, the I incorporated a lot of I wanted to in defining what a Korean fantasy looks like. I wanted to show I wanted to use costuming imagery that were distinctly of the time, as you can see through the various characters that are depicted here. I got to explore through the mythology of deities, various mythological settings, such as the when crafting when crafting the world, the founding mythology uh, of Hwanung, that led into the story of uh, the founding of Gojoseon through King Tangun. Uh, I yeah, I depicted I wanted to play around with the founding myth as the foundation of the world building, with Hwanung, the heavenly regent, regent of the heavens, descending into the world with his various attendants, in the hopes of establishing the land of Tangguk as basically wanting to engage more directly, out of personal curiosity with the world. That eventually led up to his encounter with Hongyo and Ungyo, the bear woman and tiger woman, uh, who went through who were asked him, uh, beseeched him for human. They wanted to become human, and he gave them a trial that was something along the lines of within a dark cave for an entire month with nothing but just a collection of mugwort and garlic. Uh, in our interpretation, in the regular story, hunt the tiger uh, gave up uh, gave up midway through. We added in a slight different interpretation where the tiger in purposefully sacrifice their share of the garlic and mugwort, so to give the bear an additional advantage in succeeding. And that is what, yeah, and the bear able to become mortal human, uh, married Hwanung, and gave birth to the first king of Korea, Tangun, which started which basically passed on uh, the reins of the land's history from the gods to mortals to begin crafting as they see fit. Uh, but yeah, we present various playable species or ancestries from Korean mythology, or at least based in Korean mythology, like the 도깨비. The 도깨비 we drew from 도깨비 are referred to very popularly as Korean goblins, but I felt that reading more into it, it's they're more like nature spirits, and what they are has changed over time. I mean, they gained Oni-like features after Japanese occupation, basically framed and altered a lot of Korean imagery to fit more into like Japanese aesthetic. But they're initially described in a lot of myths and features myths as very very hairy, boisterous folk that love to drink, love to wrestle, love to challenge people. They are people's id. Uh, they're people's id on full display. Their wilder side, and I we played around with it by giving them by making them like nature spirits that possess various objects to take on the appearance of people that look somewhat uncanny valley if you watch too hard. Uh, but yeah, the Sangun we play around with as descendants of the Tiger Woman that grew alongside the people of Tangguk, the Changsung on the right here, which are Korea's. They're looked at as they're guardian spirits, guardian local village spirits that you can find uh, safeguarding travelers. We consider them heav heavenly heavenly hosts that took the vessels of stone or wood to fulfill various different missions that they've descended on into the world to accomplish. One of the things that I'm very proud of exploring with this project would be our bestiary. Um, Korean, I wondered a good deal what sort of monsters there might be in Korean mythology, like I grew up with a lot of pop culture that featured Japanese yokai, uh, which are various little folk tales and monsters from various folk tales and stories that have become popularized and see various different roles in recasting in modern stories and such. And I was curious about what whether there were any Korean creatures, and I was very pleased to find with a little bit more digging that there's quite a bit of it, quite a bit of them, like the Myodusa, which the name basically translates over to cat snake, I believe. Myodusa, yeah, uh, which is a large a large serpent with a cat-like head that produces a blue mist with healing properties. The Changui is another fairly popular one in Korea, which is a tiger that is possessed that possesses or at least has enslaved the spirits of its victims. Its victims, and the victim itself, cursing its own fate, tries to find other victims for the tiger to eat. cur- jealous that other people that it's only suffered this sort of fate while others get to live in peace. It begrudges that, and it tries to drag other people to its own fate as much as possible to as a sort of self-coping with its circumstance. I'm not going over with this, am I, Shishang?
You're fine. I think it'd be great to go through the rest of the images. I think it's
Oh,
great to hear
got,
about. Yeah, yeah. But
gotcha.
yeah, but at your pace.
Oh, of
And
course.
Tim, if you have any observations or anything you want to bring in as you're listening,
No, these are fantastic, and they're both there are lots of things to think about here, and fabulous imagery. I am intrigued by the motivation for it, uh, and I've got questions, but I'll hold those.
yeah.
Got, gotcha. I just wanted to be sure that we weren't going too much over. I wasn't rambling too much. But yeah, I
Uh,
mean, but a lot of fascinating creatures. The Samdugumi it's not usually depicted as a fox, but we went with it just because this Hamdugumi is a monster that it has three heads and nine tails, which um, is often associated with the nine-tailed fox, which is well, yeah, the nine-tailed fox has appeared in Asian mythology quite a bit, but the it appears as the kitsune in Japan, the hulijing in China. Vietnam also has its own unique version too. But what I thought made the Korean version interesting was that it seemed to be defined a lot by its hunger. A lot of Korean monsters, a good number of them, have a sort of hungering to become more, to evolve past their current nature. Uh, the Kumiho seeks to consume either 100 souls or 1,000 souls, depending, eat 100 or 1,000 hearts or livers in order to ascend and become divine, to ascend to the heavens finally. Uh, the Samdugumi is our very it combines that myth and the original Samduguni myth as a kind of ghoulish monster that enjoys eating corpses. Uh, but it it basically had its hunger driven up to an umpteenth level, and its more beastly nature has become pronounced. The let's see, the creature on the right, the Chigui, comes from a story from the Silla dynasty of Korea. There's a monk named Chigui who fell in love with Queen Sondok at the time. He knew he fell in love with her beauty, but he never met her, always thinking about her. But once upon a time, I mean, but one day, there was a chance for him to actually meet her because Queen Sondok was going to visit that temple. He was so excited just thinking about it that he actually fell asleep through her visit. She learned about him and she left a bit of a memento for him, a pendant, just to say to him, I visited you, your feelings, I've acknowledged them. Which when he woke up and found out about it, his feelings only burned that much brighter that it consumed him and the temple around him in flames. So he exists as a kind of fire spirit now past that, even in death, even past death, smoldering with unrequited affections. Well, mm, not unrequited. Yeah, it's a good enough term. Uh, I wonder if a number of people in the audience have heard about the story of the Yongno, which appears in Talchum, folk dances in Korea, or at least in a specific region of Korea. Uh, it's it's a fallen celestial that appears like that has a draconic sort of appearance that tries to climb back into heaven by eating 100 corrupt yangban. It metes out justice for corrupt officials, corrupt noblemen, noblemen, and by doing so, it proves its own virtue and is let back into the heavens once again. I felt stories like that are not terribly uncommon, where you can tell that the storyteller who is of a lower class that's using their medium to vent whatever they see as societal injustice, uh, as societal injustice. While they can't, while 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 they see injustice go unpunished in real life, they can at least they can at least use the medium of fiction to criticize it or show such evil actually becoming punished, which the Yongno has come to represent. Uh, the Chosun Saja, I'm sure a number of people might also be familiar with as the messengers of the afterlife. I imagine we'll get more into discussing like their appearance in K-pop Demon Hunters, where they're depicted as demons, but they're more like just public servants. They're more like public servants that work for the bureaucracy of the underworld. It's their job to find and corral souls that are trying to escape this process. They're Grim Reapers, basically. They're psychopomps that ferry souls to the underworld. They work under the strict rules of the bureaucracy, but also because they are. I mean, on one hand, the the story that they appeared in goes to show that there's no bartering with death. Eventually, it will come to you. It shows the Chosun Saja as uh, uh, as somebody that doesn't abide by the rules of mortality and will re- reap any soul whose time it has come for them, regardless of their station or power. Uh, uh, but also based on people's perceptions of civil servants, the characterizations of them could vary a little bit. Like they could they could be a bit lax in terms of their duties. There are like webtoons and stories uh, where they're often shown as overworked, and a lot of work ends up slipping through the cracks of the system. Uh, but yeah, so a lot of fascinating monsters and creatures that I was able to collect and find, which has become in these books, both Undying Corruption and Black Market Guide to Immortality. It's really been one of my biggest joys of doing this, since I feel monsters in mythology help personify or uh, uh, crystallize different values that appear in these stories, like the values, uh, the ideals that the storytellers of the past wanted to impart or wanted to convey are easily are easily are easily known through just through the shape of the monster, what sort of form the monster is given. It's aided a lot in people's interest in general in the surf in folk culture, folklore, folk tales on a surface level, and it certainly piqued my own interest to see where where were these where did these concepts come from? What ideas built up to them? What are the contexts in which these ideas came together? And by exploring those contexts, I it certainly helps me write, uh, build build stories in a more interesting way, especially as I draw from historical material. Uh, but yeah, a little bit more into the book. So this is what people the GMs, the dungeon masters or game masters would see on their end. They would have a number of instructions and various descriptions of what's happening in the setting itself, and I would get into context for that went into the scenarios and such to assist with the GM's own storytelling. The maps here present visual aid for both the players and the GMs. The players uh, use little tokens, place them atop the grid, and have them move through the setting. And depending on where they enter, where their place is, the GM would react to uh, those characters' presence with uh, the gears of the world would basically turn and allow the story to progress. Uh, but yeah, so Undying Corruption focuses a good deal on uh, the Korean side of things, but I think I think with Black Market Guide, it continues to build on top of that because I tried to delve into more of the spiritual, more of the religious side of shared East Asian ideals and thoughts, faiths like Buddhism, Taoism, that have been shared across borders. I wanted to explore, play with, see how interconnected these ideals were, how they traveled. Uh, I mean, you can see with the book cover on the left that I focused a good deal on Buddhist imagery, basically with the demon King Mara uh, looming over a wheel of samsara, uh, just watching over this character, basically uh, may basically find this scroll every uh, as if playing into the Demon Lord Mara's grand design. I was able to explore more of uh, other different cultures' aesthetics as well. Uh, in large part, I've come to very much uh, enjoy exploring uh, more of what what others might not be too familiar with, like Japanese mythology and history, for example. I took it as an opportunity to also explore a lot into the the histories of Hokkaido, of Okinawa, of Ainu culture, and of the Ryukyu kingdom, just to explore and see exactly what what voices haven't had as much of a chance to shine. Uh, which I which I found has made a richer world for it, beyond the this idea of a single homogeneous country. I was able to explore more of gods as well in the settings, like Princess Bari on the right, who is a critical figure in Korean shamanism, the abandoned princess who, despite having been abandoned and having been raised by an elderly couple, still took pity on her parents and delved into the underworlds, sneaking past. Oh, uh, Sneaking past. Sneaking past its guardians and finding a cure for her birth parents, uh, who when she found them, have actually passed away, but through the resurrection flowers that she found, she was able to bring them back to life. And that that folktale has uh, has basically more or less made Princess Bari something of a patron for Korean shamans, for Mudang. Uh, okay. Yes, that's. I got into quite a bit. I imagine we'll take a bit of time to parse through all that.
Yeah, Nikki, thank you. I think what we'll do now,
Hmm.
is I had some rather general questions, but I think maybe it's I'd like to have Dr. Tangerhlini ask his questions first, and if I have something to follow up on, I'll go ahead and do it, and I think there's a lot for us to think about. But
Great,
yeah,
thanks. Yeah, Minky, thanks for this remarkable walkthrough of some of the art and some of the motivations behind it. I found it really inventive and playful, and at the same time trying to intersect with the living traditions of storytelling throughout Korea and actually East Asia. So what I like about this is the expansiveness of it, right? So one of my students here in folklore just last year finished his thesis on tabletop
Hmm.
gaming communities here in Berkeley, and while they were mostly DoD, fairly prosaic, it was interesting to see how community building plays such a role in that. And I think I was curious about your thoughts on the role of Manshin or Shimbang, who are, I guess, will go under the rubric of Mudang, but
Hmm.
having done a lot of field work, I always, heard a lot of pushback against the term
Yeah.
Mudang. So,
Uh,
well, I'll just use Manshin and Shimbang. Shimbang being the groups of shamans who I was working with on Jeju. I'm curious about how you see community building, both in the role playing itself, but also the idea of communities, inherent communities, in the both the art and in the overall game space.
well, I do think that it derives from a lot of the oral storytelling traditions, the that the I mean, I mean, tabletop gaming is a way is a way for a group to collaborate and collaborate in exploring a world together. The GM can present information, yes, but but the players also, everyone's adding something into the greater scope of this world. As far as the connection with, yeah, I think I think there's a lot of discourse behind the terminology and such to it. Like the the use of the word shamans too is a little bit. Some people don't prefer using that. It's a priest of Shinism, a practitioner of Shinism is also something that it's, mm, yeah, but it's a bit difficult. But the I've had talks about it with the editor. The editor seems largely okay with keeping to Mudang for the moment, at least. Uh, I, it's, but yeah, uh,
Oh, I wouldn't get caught up too much in terminological things. I think what's really interesting here is it's a role-playing game inspired by shamanism. One of the things that I found so interesting was that, the kut, the shaman rituals themselves have a long a strong component of role-playing
yes.
and sort of conversational reconstruction of
Hmm.
uh what would I call it? Sort of uh, performance context related, uh, sort of almost like consensus storytelling, right? So that the storytelling emerges as part of the kut itself. And I think that's kind of a clever element of turning this into a role-playing game based on ideas of the shamanistic. And I was wondering if you have sort of examples of sort of the inventiveness of players that you've witnessed who are playing your games or might perhaps have communicated with you, sort of where these adventures go, since every kut sort of goes off in its own adventure. It seems that every RPG, goes off in its own adventure as well.
Hmm. I've always enjoyed hearing how people generally uh, handle encounters. Like, yeah, there's a very communicational, like in the process of a kut that a mudang performs, there's a conversational aspect. Like I've always been tickled with the anecdotes of a mudang invoking the spirit of an official from the heavens, trying to I try trying to receive some matter of favor uh, be- for better fortunes for their children's exams or what have you, or just their spouse's health or such. It's very there's a somewhat mm, I want to use the word irreverent, but I mean it's very animated. These sort of conversations, uh, the the way the Mudang beseech and use various different offerings as in order to, let's say in that specific example, bribe the official. I thought that I thought that that component fit very well with what people normally play in D&D. And the initial scenario with the Wraith of the Wetlands, I always love hearing how people generally handle those situations, handle those encounters without immediately getting into combat. Just what sort of clever bits of dialogue do they get into that allows them to allow, allows them to get deeper into the psychology of the various spirits and such. That what is it that they want, what is it that they're after. The wraith itself is that the players are charged to exercise at first. Certainly has more going on that leads them to confront a bigger conspiracy surrounding all that.
I love the idea of a conspiracy of these spirits and lesser gods. I'm not sure if you're familiar with some of the work of Michael Dillon Foster, who's worked
Mm.
on Japanese sort of lower mythologies. He might be a really interesting person, interlocutor as well. And then, of course, in the Korean space, the mythologies are incredibly contingent, and they're always moving when somebody proposes a coherent mythology for Korea. It sort of falls apart very, very quickly because they're so regional, and they're so based on different interpretations, and they're also very syncretic, right? So you've got these intersection
Mm,
of all of these different belief systems and narratives, creating this incredibly rich belief landscape. So I think it's kind of fun that your players then get to traipse across this landscape in ways that are wonderfully uh, uh, animated through these reimaginings
hmm
uh, of the artwork, right? So if you go to any sort of shaman temple, you'll find all sorts of different artwork, and I think it's really intriguing to see these reinterpretations of some of that artwork as well. Um, how much role did you have in sort of developing this artwork?
Oh,
Mickey, before that, there is a question related to artwork, so that we can piggyback on, right?
oh, of
Great, yeah.
course.
Is Claire Han asks, is there any sort of unquote Koreanness in visual expression or style besides motifs drawn from Korean folklore or mythology, or do these images follow what are more or less conventional or familiar visual styles in RPGs? And that with Tim's question about um, your role in the art design. There was another question from Michael Ralston, but we'll circle back to that in a bit.
Sure, of course. Yeah, that's it's difficult to really, I mean, I struggle with it myself to determine like what what is Korean aesthetically. Uh it's difficult, but I suppose through efforts, through taking in various storytellings, I worked with a number of different Korean artists in creating these designs. I mean, motifs, yes, we used a lot of visual motifs that we found through our research of the various eras and such. But as far as whether or not they reach into a more broader theme of Koreanness, it's I admit it's hard for me to say honestly. Uh, we we did our best though at the very least to try exploring new interpretations of designs rather than like rather than staying a bit too familiar with traditional concepts of dragons and orcs and what have you. We I left it to a number of the artists to I guess through their own work explore through these concepts what yeah what is the Korean component in these. Uh, it's yeah, I must admit that's a very compelling question. Uh, I mean, as a Korean American myself, it's something I'm still continuously doing, trying to do as I explore as I engage with my works. Like, what aspects of what I'm putting back in or what I'm receiving from by reading uh, tap into an innate sort of Koreanness, what have you. It's difficult to say.
I mean, I think when it comes to artwork, right? I mean, especially since some of these characters or themes or have visualizations in art history, right? In the
Oh
history of
yes.
folk art and whatnot, right? And then so you do have these motifs that persist, but some of these creatures probably have never appeared in visual form, right? And so the artist has to kind of figure it out and like fill in the blanks, right? And inevitably sort of the um the decisions regarding art style are informed by what's current in society at the moment, the art styles that are popular amongst these circles. Even in this particular scene that you're sharing right now,
Mm,
the one on the left, artistically resonates a bit more with the sort of high fantasy illustration style that you might see in more traditional Dungeons and Dragons,
Yeah.
a bit, World of Warcraft style. But the one on the right, draws aesthetically from, I think, webtoons, a little bit of anime, but one that is in a different register, right? I think the bold line, the sort of thin line style, um, is kind of the drawing style that we see in webtoons, digital art, um, and has some resonances with K-pop Demon Hunters, not just in terms of
Yes.
the figure, right, but just in terms of the visual art style. And it's very current in animation today. So I think but if we look back on Korean art history, right, if you take something from the 18th century, you'll see that, there's a bit of, there's some perspective that comes from, drawing with perspective that comes from Western European artistic conventions, a little bit of influence from late Ming landscape. You have these circulations of styles, right? And I think this is in a way part of how art works in general. And then in the creative process, there's inevitably this filling in the blank, right? And so in a way, you're I think something like Undying Corruption or Black Market is in the active process of creating what it means to have a Korean aesthetic.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, right. I mean, you're part of the process, and since you're working with all these artists, I mean, there's a heterogeneity to it as well. So I think it's right. But with that, I think we should get back to Michael's question, Michael Ralston's
Yes.
question, and I think it ties into this question of different fan communities,
Oh yes.
right? The overlap between people who play role-playing games and Korean Wave or K-pop fans is the market or communities. Other RPG players or K-pop fans or both? What's the overlap like?
I so I've met a lot of people that came into this not really knowing anything about Korean mythology. I think they were very interested in engaging with it. Like I think their first interactions with Korean culture might have been Hmm. I haven't, in my community, I haven't really talked too much about K-pop itself. Not so much the music, but a lot of people were familiar with webtoons in particular. Webtoons, various different genres of webtoons, the various movies that came out. Like when I did Undying Corruption in 2023, I believe. I mean, it was right after Parasite had had won its Oscars, uh, which was a really glowing moment for yeah, just the K K wave, K culture wave. So I think a lot of that drove people's curiosity into wanting to learn more. Uh, but yeah, I in terms of gaming and such. Yeah, I think webtoons was really the major through line, if I remember correctly. Webtoons, movies, maybe some K-pop, yes. But as more comes out, I'm certainly hoping that there's a continuing resurgence of interest in in what is so Korean about Korean culture. Uh,
Yeah. Uh, there's a somewhat related question from Fiona Shu, who asks, I
yes.
don't really play games, so I'm wondering if you can explain a bit more about how players are supposed to interact with these characters in the game. Also wondering if you see any parallels and differences between how game players engage with the characters and the role that folklore plays in Chosun Korea.
Right. Okay. So the way players engage, the GM normally begins by presenting a scenario. They describe a bit about what's going on, a bit about where the players are situated at. I mean, when folks come to a table, they normally have had a session zero already, where they discuss how much of their characters already have known each other. They have an idea of what they are all there for. They have goal, kind of a common shared goal, kind of in mind that um, they try to fulfill. Uh, but as the game actually starts, the GM elaborates on what's going on in this situation, and from then on, it's the player's job to role play, to engage through the vessel of their characters, more about the situation, discover more, learn more, converse with various different characters that the GM has introduced, solve situations through skill checks, ability checks, react, and it's in that process a story comes together in a role playing medium. And what was the second aspect to the second component to that question? Just wanted to make sure.
When players are interacting
Hmm.
with these characters, so the folkloric figures,
Yes, yes.
are they, are there differences or parallels in how these uh, how should I reword it? As I understand it, so if in the story and the folklore, these characters are doing certain things, when players interact with them, are there instances where the interactions go beyond the confines of what the original stories or
Oh,
folkloric inspirations
oh,
might
oh,
suggest?
oh, yeah, absolutely. Like there, like for example, there's the story of the Chomagu, which features a fairy tale of a monster that made its way into a house while its occupants were out. It was eating it was eating whatever it found. Uh, peep the when the folks found it, it tried to strike the monster, get it out of the house, but they found that the more they the more they struck it, it actually grew larger from that abuse. These are these tales, these stories provide cues for how creatures at the very least would behave normally. But of course, when you throw those situations at players who bring bring to the table characters that follow different mindsets, certainly that deviate from the confines of the story, yeah, you'll start to find new you'll start to find there are new the story, yes, the story does deviate, and it's up to the GM to sort of use their knowledge of the initial story to sort of react in a way that's faithful to the core and the spirit of the original tale. And that is a lot of how both player and GMs engage with the ideas that went into these stories initially.
So what you're saying here is actually really very interesting, and also ethnographically, because this is kind of a mapping of what happens during a coup, where the Manchin might be in some ways seen as the DM, and the clients sort of playing around with this. One of the things I really would have loved to do is with my little fieldwork village, where we had a Manchin and some assistants or Somi, and all of these wonderful clients who just were incredibly inventive, loved to tell stories, were really fun. I would have loved to have had this game and brought that to them, and had them, taught them how to play the game, and then had them kind of go wild on this. Because ethographically, I think that would have been one of the great sort of meta coot that I could ever have imagined. And I think it would have been really, something that they would have really enjoyed, but also something that in some ways would have mapped onto what they were already doing, with the vast number of
Mm.
rituals that made up the landscape, the belief landscape of this tiny little seaside village, that I had the incredible uh, privilege of being able to experience.
Korea actually has a pretty growing I mean, after COVID, it certainly exploded in interest. It's got a growing tabletop role-playing community there. I imagine it's bigger in metropolitan areas like Seoul, since it's easier for people to gather in such a setting versus a more remote rural area. But I do know that there are a lot of Korean creators that are putting out their own game systems beyond Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. I do reckon that Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder, given their ties to the sword and sorcery genre, are a bit more violent. They emphasize combat a bit more, which I find to be fun. But if you're trying to, depending on the story you want to tell, there are different systems that kind of explore different ways of engaging, reacting, adding to, well, the narrative that's being crafted. I would be interested in seeing whether there are any recent works in Korea from a Korean creator that overlaps between like th- these between a good style sort of engaging with spirits, and if it's ever been incorporated into a game, that seems really fascinating.
Uh, we have two more questions from the audience. One from, oh, well, I think they're related actually. So Michael Rawson asks, how do you flesh out which character has what powers, and how do you adjust for different levels of powers, how characters gain strength, etc. And King Kwang One asks, and he says, thank you for sharing your wonderful work. I am interested in understanding more about your creative thought process. Any particular reasons for choosing the creatures, personalities, and deities that are highlighted in your tabletop games? And how do you incorporate them into your games?
Okay. Yeah, I'll start with Michael's question. So, as I mentioned, there is a session zero where players and GMs just kind of gather together and talk about what it is they want out of the game that they play for theoretically every week, once every week for 3 hours. Uh, they explore character creation together, wherein they likely choose a playable species or ancestry, a playable class, through which that determines the scope of their powers, that determines exactly their skill sets, basically, their toolkit for going into this story. Uh, like I, in my book, I created a number of unique subclasses, piggybacking off of the traditional D&D classes of, fighter, wizard, rogue, that I hoped would ele make it easier for players to tap into a more Korean sort of Korean sort of experience. Like the rogue, I like the Naraka prosecutor rogue, is a rogue that has authority vested by Chosung, the 10 Narakwang, the 10 judges of the underworld, to investigate in the upper world crimes and potentials that would interrupt the delicate flow of life and death. Uh, uh, yeah, the sorcerer, the nine-tailed soul, they derive power in the same way a Kumiho might, in that they have their magic is fueled by a deep hunger inside of them that they try to fill as much as possible and see see grown as through level progression. I mean, the level progression system kind of balances everything so that at certain points in the story, levels one, level two, level three, everything's kind of everything's kind of kept managed so that they don't entirely go awry. Like the story doesn't completely overwhelm and wipe out the entire party, or it's up to the GM, and it's up to the GM mainly to kind of manage that. We call it power scaling, I think. uh, but yeah, I mean, within the rules of the system of the game system, players players go through the steps of deciding what it is that they want to be, what it is that what their characters do, and as they level up, they accrue. As they level up, that ability set expands, depending on the sort of subclass, the sort of subclass that they hit, what have you. As far as the second question goes, I'm sorry, could you repeat it for me?
I think you answered it.
Oh, did I? Oh.
Right. Yeah. Oh, well, you answered the second part of the second question, but maybe the particular mo reasons for choosing the characters. Your well, maybe we can rephrase it this way. Are there mythological characters that you wouldn't incorporate, or you're choosing some from tradition,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Are there examples, for example, where um
So why have I
like
chosen some and why have I left out others,
yeah,
basically?
yeah.
Yeah, so the book Undying Corruption is about 520 pages. That might seem like a lot, but given everything that we have to make sure that we include in the book, a balance between the world building and just the adventure itself, we have a very limited amount of space to devote to monsters, to classes, to what have you. So yes, I would have to be selective. And the reason I chose the ones that I did, I mean, Hwanung is central to the founding myth of Tangguk, where it's through his descent that kicks off the founding mythology of the king uh, of the first kingdom. So of course I would have to include him. As I did my best to go through a scale of importance, like Paridegi, Princess Bari is very critical to Shinnism. So I certainly wanted to incorporate her as just as a sort of divine patron that players can kind of refer to. As far as what I haven't included, well, uh I mean, honestly speaking, I, f- I I reach situations where I feel I want to include them. I just don't have the space to devote to it. The ones that I've personally excluded, I just felt have similar stories or similar guises, appearances uh to to monsters or such that people might already be very familiar with. I like like for example, let's see if I can like certain monsters, the concept of the Hydra is very popular. It's the concept of the serpent or the serpent with the multiple heads. Like that is it's I have to make sure that I can bring in something fresh, something unique that is able to let ourselves stand out from what people are already familiar with. That's kind of the tricky thing, since tabletop role play people who play tabletop role playing games are probably more than likely familiar with various different mythologies of various cultures. So, and of course, there are overlaps of stories, very similar stories that you get among all of them. So it does become a challenge. Uh, I, I, I try to. I separate those that are unique, that are more unique, and ones that I'm not a bit confident could, uh, could be as fresh to as to an audience that's probably genre savvy, is what I'd call it. It's tough in that regard. Those are the considerations I kind of have to make with by navigating tabletop role-playing games specifically that you wouldn't normally get. Just, if you're writing a novel that was divorced from those sorts of considerations, like what do you care what somebody else has already written? Just make your own story.
We have a bunch of other questions.
Mm.
I think that you're getting a lot of good ones. Yomo asks or says, "Thanks. This is quite a lot of fun to imagine. Just curious. I wonder if Tangook has any form of administrative government structure. It seems to me that bureaucratic structures, imperial or otherwise, could be a way to conceptualize the other world. Conceptualize how the other world operates in East Asia, oftentimes like a mirror image of this world, beyond the level of borrowing titles of officials just to show evil power."
Yeah, so the present time in Tangook is it reflects a bit of Joseon Dynasty. It's under an age of illumination, which mirrors the focus on. I mean, the age of illumination in the setting is uh, a movement of magic users, scholars that believe that magic should be the highest form of magic should be practical. It should it should focus less on worlds after this one and focus more on building up the material world, uh, regardless of the considerations of the overtly supernatural. I thought that that would be a good place to a good way to set the in, a good way to set the context of the entire story. Uh, just reflecting a sort of again that change into neo-Confucianism. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of ways you can use this sort of storytelling to kind of discuss, explore, like explore more modern ideas as well. Like there's this chapter in Undying Corruption that has certainly been uh, inspired by the various various protest movements, democratization movements that have occurred through modern Korean history. The candlelight protests also were fresh in my mind as I was writing that section. So yeah, I mean, I can't say that I don't take modern Korea into thought as I approach. I mean, I think that's kind of inevitable since I, as a writer, am also sort of am a subject of just the present conditions of the modern times, right?
Great. And William Dunkel asks, "Hi, Mickey, thank you for your talk. It has been very interesting. My question, as a designer, do you feel there is a difference in engaging with these histories as a player versus how one might respond to them as a traditional audience member or reader? Um, do you use the game systems to engage players beyond viewing Korean mythology as a commodity? And if so, how?"
Yeah, so it's a good question. I I've researched a number of different stories, and I'm writing for an audience that is largely unfamiliar with them, which gives me more of an impetus to try to educate people of what sort of themes have composed Korean mythology. Yeah, beyond just as a commodity, just using various different aesthetics. I've done my best to try to reflect or at least my interpretation of the various spirit intent behind these behind these tales as much as possible. Like I think I I try not to deviate too much from the boundaries set by the initial mythological stories, like K-pop Demon Hunter, for example. The Chosun Saja in that story appear as demons rather than over malevolent beings that have little compatibility with the living world, uh, while at the same time keeping the aesthetics of Chosun Saja with the cat and the black clothing. That's very that's very that's very characteristic of them. I Yeah, I mean, in order to stay within the parameters of also educating people and not just, not just borrowing from mythology, I do my best to keep into consideration the original intent and try to represent it the best I can.
Okay. To Naneki, we are nearing the end of the allotted time, but maybe if Tim, you have any final questions, or I had some other questions, but I think the audience asked them all for me, so I won't insist too much
Yeah,
on
no, these have been great questions and a wonderful, far-reaching conversation. I'm really intrigued by the sort of the folkloric element, both of role-playing games and the incorporation of a folkloric process as the inspiration for these role-playing games. It goes back to
Mm,
some of the early role-playing games, and we can almost even see sort of the storytelling as a form of negotiated role playing, right? So
mm,
there's always going to be this tension, this dialectic between the individual on the one hand and the traditions of the group to which they belong. And I think in some ways this sort of brings that back in a period where most people are so attended to their screens, that low level face to face interaction over time, and these repeated interactions that'll really allow you to negotiate the contours of an emerging tradition, which is really the process to a T that happened, over decades and over centuries, where there never really was any sort of normative form, but rather this sort of network process that that allows for variation within some sort of bounds. What I love here is the inventive artwork and the situations that allow people to insert themselves into this. I just really, I want to get this into the hands of my or I wish I had had this. We could go back in time. I just think these women divers in this small seaside community, we just would have had a blast with this. And I think in some ways it would have captured both their imaginations and the spirit of co-creation that kept these small rural villages, you know, um, alive,
oh
quite
yes.
frankly. So I really want to encourage you and congratulate you on this it looks like just an amazing achievement. So
Uh, Thank you. And there's a great deal more that I can stand to continue to learn and educate myself on. I mean, you mentioned a number of sources, a number of different people whose works that you might want to recommend me. I'm very interested in hearing more about that after after this call ends. Uh, but yeah, I like I mentioned, I'm an English major. I'm entering Korean history fairly late in the game, but I'm doing my best to read through as many books and as many materials as I can. I guess yeah, if I can recommend just a couple for just the basics that have really helped me through my process. Uh, the illustrated the illustrated guide to Korean mythology has been a big boon. it contains a lot of the essential folk tales of Korea with various historical illustrations, paintings uh, associated with those tales and such included in the book. Um, I also benefited a good deal from, let's see, uh, I mean, I I certainly do wish that oh yeah, the Encyclopedia to Korean Monsters is a more contemporary source. The sci-fi author in Korea, Kwak Jae-sik, put together a large researched compilation into folk tales, finding various different monsters, various different recurring creatures and such that he was able to find and record, giving them their own names and descriptions of the consistencies behind them from references in various different historical sources, like various different palace annals and such, the Samguk as well. But yeah, there's more I can stand to learn, and I very much appreciate the assistance that uh, Professor Shishang, you have given me over these couple years after, since we have met in particular.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I mean, I think we all learned a lot from this, and I think the conversation went far beyond what, and in a good way, beyond what we originally thought we would cover. So, and thank you, Tim, for joining us, especially at somewhat short notice. And I think, it's, I'm very happy to have been a part of this, and to have the opportunity to have hosted you. But with that, we are approaching the end of our time. So I think, maybe we should, Minky's been on for over an hour now. I think maybe it is time to give our speakers a bit of a break. So a round of applause. Thank you for coming. And this concludes our the formal part of our session.